I want to read a verse from Psalm 73. It says, "Truly God is good to Israel. He is always good to us, to such as are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost stumbled. My steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the boastful when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." And this verse really stuck out to me because sometimes we look at our lives, right? And we compare them to other people's lives, and it might even seem like wherever we look, there's always going to be somebody who seems to be more successful than us, somebody who seems to be more prosperous than us, somebody who seems to have all their stuff together. They might have a bigger house, a bigger family, a better job, all these other things, which are good things. It can be good things to have. But the question is, are we content with what we do have? And especially as Christians, we think that in order to glorify God the best and the most, that we have to be the best and that we have to stand out among the world as being better than them, as being more successful, having a better car, job, bigger family, more respect and acceptance with our peers and the industry that we're in and all these other things. And we think that that is the way that God will get the most glory out of our lives if we climb this ladder and show ourselves to be better than everyone else. We think that will prove to the world that our God is the best, that he is the strongest, the most powerful, that we're right and Jesus is right and the gospel is true and everyone needs to trust in him. But it's really contrary to the truth most of the time. Because our kingdom is not of this world. Our success is not shown forth through the things of the world, through the standards that the world lives by. Right? And I've judged myself that way sometimes, and I've been envious of what other people have because I've thought to myself, why are they prospering? It looks like they're winning. And it looks like I am a failure in the eyes of God, because if I really was a true disciple of Jesus, then I would be doing better than all of them and showing all of them that my God is the greatest, the most powerful, that he holds all things in his hands. But that is a temptation. You see, envy is a temptation. And I bet you even Jesus was tempted in that way, because he was tempted at all points, yet he never sinned. I'm sure he was tempted to feel as though dying on the cross in weakness, looking like a failure in front of everybody publicly, was going to be a testimony of his failure and that his God was not the true God. The disciples, Peter himself, said, Lord, you're not going to die. You're not going to suffer. Peter didn't see how Christ's suffering and dying could show the world that he was the true God. Losing the battle, that's how God's going to show his glory? That's how God's going to win? Right? It didn't seem like it made sense. But the weakness of God is more powerful than the power of all the men of the world. See, the wisdom of God is God's power. Jesus Christ crucified on the cross brought life to us, brought us salvation and healing. but to the world it looks like foolishness. You know? How many football games do you go and watch? How many NFL teams have the mentality of this, thinking, we're going to go out there and we're going to let ourselves be physically destroyed and let the other team put us to death and score as many points as they want. We're going to score 0. How many professional football teams have that mentality? None of them. It's foolishness. The world looks at that as foolishness. Many of us probably look at it as foolishness too. You can't tell me that that's God's game plan to win the battle, to lose it first, to lay his life down, to let go and let his enemies triumph over him. You know? But I'm telling you, that's his game plan. And if you and I would like to prosper, if you and I would like to be successful servants of God, right? To pick up our cross and follow Jesus Christ, then we have to be willing to let go of our own life, not to try and save it, not to fight back and try and win the battle because we think that that is how God will be glorified. You know, Jesus Christ has given us all authority over heaven and earth, but let me tell you, Jesus also had all authority in heaven and earth, and he used his authority by laying down his life. Isn't that something? He had all the power in his hands. He had all the angels at his disposal. They could have destroyed the earth in a split second, put everything to death, erased our memory from existence. He could have destroyed his enemies like that. But instead, he let himself die. Why? Because that is a key characteristic of the nature of God. He is a loving parent who sacrifices himself for his children because he loves us. And the world needed to see that side of God. That side of God needed to be revealed to them so that they could believe. That was the foundation of faith. That God died for us, his enemies. He let his enemies put him to death. He let his enemies make him look like a fool on the cross. And he was humble enough to do that. And he didn't let it destroy his identity either. He didn't think himself less than or a failure, even though his life was cut short, was cut out. You see, Jesus Christ could not have glorified God to the measure that he did if he did not first let his enemies defeat him openly in public. You know? But if it was us or somebody else in the world, our strategy for that final battle would have been, I'm going to pick myself up by my bootstraps. I'm going to use my authority and I'm going to show everyone else that my God is the real God and he's the most powerful, and I'm going to defeat everybody so that they know that I'm greater and my God's greater than them. But that wasn't God's plan. And that would not have glorified God to the same measure. Not even close. You see, when God raises the dead back to life, when God makes something out of nothing, then he gets all of the glory. All of it. And for us, what does it look like in our lives? How are we living this gospel out in our lives? Because in many ways, God has allowed us to be weak. God has allowed us to go through situations that are seemingly huge failures. Maybe it's because of our own sin sometimes too. But nevertheless, God has allowed it. God has allowed us to look defeated, humiliated, dead on that cross, to look like a failure, to look foolish. He has allowed this to happen in our lives. Should we be ashamed of this? Was Jesus ashamed to lay down his life for us? Was Jesus ashamed of the humiliation and the humility, the weakness, the wisdom that he showed in his death for us? Or was he literally being who he truly was? That was Jesus' true identity on the cross. Part of it. The foundation of it, the beginning of it. Humility comes before honor. And if God has let us be humbled through these deaths, if God is allowing us to stand out amongst our peers, looking like failures because we don't have the same things as them, we're not as blessed as them, it seems like, physically. We might even have sickness that we're going through. We might have trials. We might look shameful and weak and foolish. We might not have the cars, the career, or a family. We might be all alone in the world. And we might be asking ourselves, God, how is this a part of your plan to be glorified? I am cursed. I am accursed by all men. I am rejected. I am scoffed at. Nobody respects me. I am the laughingstock of my peers and my community. God, how is this a part of your plan to be glorified in my life? I feel like a failure. God, give me all the things that they have, God. And even better, show them that I'm your son. Show them that you are the giver of good gifts, Lord. Right now, they think it's them. They think they've earned all this stuff. They think they have no need for you, Lord God. They think you're a fool. They think Jesus on the cross is foolishness, weakness, it's stupidity. And they think the same of me, God. When will my time come? When will I be glorified like they are glorified? When can I be blessed? When will I receive the desires of my heart, Lord? When will you hear and answer my prayer, Lord? Show them who I am. Glorify me too. Does that sound like our prayer sometimes? Does it sound like that's what's going on inside of our hearts? Because if it does, then let me tell you, you are more blessed than anyone else in the world, or the entire universe, heavens and the earth. Because we are not of this world. We're not supposed to look like the rest of the world. We are supposed to pick up our cross and carry it. Our lives are supposed to look like Jesus on the cross. We carry his death about in our bodies so that we may also reveal his life, his resurrection to the entire world. And when we are weak, then we are strong, and his power is made perfect in our weakness. And if we have borne the image of the first man, the corruptible man, Adam, then we also are promised to bear the image of the second man, Christ, the resurrected, the glorified, the spirit man, the image of the true God. Sometimes we want to write our own story. Sometimes we think we know the way things should go. We know, God. We know, God, I know how you could be glorified in my life. I know how you can be glorified in my life, God. It would be doing these things here, Lord, that I've asked for. But God's ways and God's thoughts are way higher than ours. Right? This is true. Sometimes our lives look the way that they do. Sometimes they look different than we think they should look because God is a better writer of the story than we are. He knows how to get the most glory out of our lives. And first, the story must start with death, weakness, failure, humiliation, humility, sacrifice. It must start with the gospel, guys. Just as it had to start that way for Jesus, to show forth the glory of God, the resurrection, the power of God, the righteousness of God, the mercy, the compassion of God, the love of God. It had to start with suffering. Had to. It had to start with failure, being defeated, seemingly defeated. It had to start with him being set apart from the world and the way the world works. It has to start with us being set apart from the world and even the church and the way the world and the church looks. And when God starts to set you apart, it feels like you're being sacrificed for the sake of others. And it's true. But God is setting you apart because he's preparing you for what comes next. He's preparing you for the resurrection to show forth the glory of his resurrection power in life, which is not a power that we have in our own, but it has to come from God. And when we are sitting there dead on the cross, in the grave, totally defeated, and then God raises us from the dead, then they will know that he is Lord. Then they will know that he is the maker of all things seen and unseen, the one who makes something from nothing, the only one who can bring life from death, the one who created life itself from the beginning, the creator of all living things. He who is life in himself, Jesus Christ, the true God, the resurrection, and the life. He knows how to be fully glorified in our lives. But to us, it might not look like it. It might look like he's off his rocker. He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. He's really lost it now. You know? God knows what he's doing, though. No matter what you're going through, no matter what the death, no matter what the circumstance, God knows what he's doing. He's still on the throne, and he is still the author and the finisher of our faith. The author has complete authority over the story that he's writing. And God has made us as vessels of mercy and glory, not as wrath, but vessels of mercy and glory. And whatever the story is that he's writing right now, I'm telling you, you're going through what you're going through right now so that God may be fully glorified in your life. And it might look different than the world. It might look different than your peers and your brothers and sisters in church even. But you will not be disappointed in the end. You will not be disappointed in the end. You will be grateful that God was on the throne, that God was in charge of leading you in your life, and not you yourself. because the story that he is writing surpasses anything we could ever possibly come up with on our own. And the world wants to write their own story. The world wants to take control of their lives. The world wants to exalt themselves. But no matter how high they exalt themselves, no matter how powerful, big and strong, and no matter how good of an image they paint of themselves to the entire world, no matter how many people they're worshipped by, it could still never come close to comparing to the glory that God is going to reveal in us. All of creation, even the angels, are waiting to see who we truly are come and be manifested as sons and daughters of God. And when it's all said and done, God is going to receive all the glory with our lives. And it's going to be beautiful. And the end will be far greater than the beginning. It's not worth even comparing. But we got to let him write the story. And we got to understand that we don't understand. And we got to understand that he does understand. He knows what he's doing. You know? And a part of having the peace that surpasses all understanding is realizing that we can't fully understand. And the more we try to understand, the more we lose our peace. And that's why the devil is always trying to get us to understand. He's always trying to get us to take back control of the situation. He's always saying things like, do you look at what's going on around you in your life? If you don't do something, you're going to perish. If you don't find a solution, you're going to perish. If you don't figure this situation out and fix it and fight, you're going to lose. And you're going to disgrace the name of God even. It's the devil who's trying to get us to understand everything, to lean on our own understanding, to take power and control of our own lives, to save ourselves. And I'm telling you, not even Jesus did that. He laid down his life. Nobody took it from him. He chose to lay it down. And he had power to lay it down, and he had power to raise it up again. He has power to lay our lives down too, but let us do it willingly, knowing what we're dying for. And let us also believe that he has power to raise us back up again. He came first. He did it all first. Guys, Jesus didn't leave behind a giant house. He didn't leave behind a bunch of physical kids or a physical wife or all these riches and blessings. But guess what? He's spiritually the richest. He has the most spiritual children. And he left behind a spiritual temple here on earth, whose glory will never fade, whose kingdom will never end. It will rule and reign forever, and there will be joy. There will be no more tears. There will be no more wars, no more sin, no more fighting, no more pain. It will all be one big happy family again. And our time here on earth is short. Maybe we think we know how our life should go. It's very easy to think that way. There are many good blessings in this world. They all come from God. But then there are spiritual things that we don't understand. And sometimes giving up the physical blessings in this world, letting God withhold things from us, gives him a chance to paint a picture that is not of this world. You know, God is writing the story. God is on the throne. And sometimes the people who suffer the most loss, sometimes the people who go through the hardest things in this life, sometimes the people that are met with the most disappointments and discomforts and unfair things happening to them, those are often the people that God is going to use to speak of his power, his righteousness, of his holiness through them. And there is no greater calling, guys.